Did y'all miss me?
Get out! Get out!
Originally I was actually gonna do that Guess Who's Back by Eminem, but YouTube already hates me, so I probably shouldn't be tempting the gods right now. So with my reintroduction into Crossout, I've actually been doing a lot of the Doomsday Car seasonal quests here, and since I have so many of the weeklies actually stored up here, being efficient with them has actually become a priority, and especially considering that I've gotten 30 levels in 3 days, which is quite nice. I actually wanted to show a few tips that I've learned throughout just doing this that hopefully will help improve your leveling experience if you have a similar situation as mine, or is just maybe more useful if you haven't heard of these before. So let's get started. So one of the most common seasonal challenges that you will ever do involve doing something in missions. That includes either dealing damage, destroying vehicles, destroying parts, etc, etc, etc. There's a lot of missions involving just doing missions. And to do this the most effectively, I recommend using Patrol. Now you could do get the batteries, get the scrap, or get the wires if you want to make a little bit more moolah, but Patrol has a couple of distinct advantages. For one, it's much shorter since you're facing AI, so between 1 to 2 minutes is the average Patrol mission, versus these which can extend to 3 to 4 minutes a piece, which if you do that, 20, 30 times, that racks up to be quite a lot of time. So doing this saves you a lot of time in the end. Not to mention that in Patrol, you can make a lot more progress than if you actually went through these, because Patrol, since you're facing a lot of AI units, they are super easy to take down, super easy to deal damage to, and super easy to destroy. So if you need to get like a lot of stuff done really quickly, Patrol is the best way to get a lot of these seasonal challenges done. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So for raid type missions that you do occasionally get, I'd recommend doing missions such as Perimeter Breach, which unfortunately I do not have right now. And the reason why you want to do Perimeter Breach is that you can actually just bum rush completely through it, just going straight to the first 2 turrets near that one gate, and then going directly towards the crate to go ahead and start that mission, and then immediately run back, ignoring all the mob pools that spawn. And the reason why you want to do that is that it saves you more time at the end. If you have to do some 10, 15, 20 missions, or 20 raids, doing that will ultimately save you half an hour, an hour's worth of time, instead of doing, say, like a 10 to 14 minute frontier defense mission, which is probably not the most hunky-dory. And when it comes to raids, try to avoid doing frontier defense. While frontier defense is a nice mission, it is quite a long mission, and if you end up doing, 5 or 6 of these for however many you need to complete, you'll end up spending nearly an hour or more doing missions when you could do Perimeter Breach, which is much, much, much faster. If you want to be economical with your missions, you can try to do harder data theft missions or War for Fire missions, as those do tend to pay out better. But I'd make sure you try to only do hard than if you're trying to go that route of being, economical with your missions. But also with raids, make sure that you're actually doing the appropriate raid difficulty, because there are some weekly missions that require you to do either medium intensity, easy intensity, or hard intensity missions, so make sure you're actually doing the correct one. Another thing to also consider when you're doing raids is that if you have any mission that involves doing, say, damage with missiles or damage with cannons or damage with X, Y, or Z that isn't specific to mission or brawls, raids are an absolutely perfect place to do it, because raids have plenty of enemies in which you can do tons of damage to, including the heavy-hitting bosses that have thousands upon thousands of HP. So if you quickly need a lot of damage to be dealt, raids are the best place to go, and I recommend doing that if you need those to be quickly done. You could also save up and try to wait for a one they have to wait. It's like, oh, I have to kill 40 lunatic cars. That's also a great thing to also wait up, because then you can do 2 at the exact same time. Great way to earn a lot of progress really quickly. And on that same note of checking parameters, make sure you also check the parameters of some of your quests, because some of these quests actually do require very specific type of weapons and used in a very specific type of way. So for example, Shotgun Mastery here, it specifically asked me to get Shotgun Mastery 2, and if you hover over it, you can see that Shotgun Mastery only uses 2 shotguns, that being the Spitfire and the Sledgehammer, as those are the only sort of rare tier weapons there. So if you try to use, say, the Meech, the Leech, the Goblin, or the Junk Bow, you actually won't be able to do any sort of progress towards Shotgun Mastery, and it'd be a complete waste of time. So make sure that you're using the correct parameters here. That also extends to raids such as this Lunatic raid here, which requires you to kill 40 Lunatic cars, which you can find out what type of enemy is inside a raid by hovering over it, you can see that we mostly have scavengers, dawn children, and nomads. So just make sure you check in the parameters of your missions, because sometimes you maybe think, oh, shotgun mastery, okay, I just got to destroy people while, you know, wearing a shotgun. You go in with a couple of goblin builds, and then you realize, oh, I've just been sitting here doing 10 missions and I made 0 progress. Yeah, it can happen sometimes. It can happen sometimes. And when it also comes to the parameter missions too, there may be some times where you actually do have both a damage mission and both a destruction mission that use the exact same weapon type. So actually using the exact same weapon type actually may be beneficial in that regard, because then you can whack out 2 quests at the exact same time, assuming you have them stacked up like I do. Now for crafting missions, these are a bit rarer, but they do exist, such as this one that tells you to craft 2 special parts or better. And so what I'd recommend for those is, by far, make sure you craft the cheapest one there, but also make sure you craft a weapon that is also economical. So you could always use a website like crossoutdatabase.com and find out whether or not any of those weapons in there that you can craft on a faction that you're active with, and see if any of those have a positive crafting margin. On the second hand too, I'd also make sure that you have the parts readied up. So for example, I have a Founders faction active, which some of you may not, and I have the array steering wheel that I'm going to try to get parts of, and as you can see I have 2 out of 4 right now, and I'm getting more parts. But the reason why you want to have these stored up is that in case you ever get these type of missions, you can go ahead and just quickly bang these things out, and you just get your experience right away, allowing you to unlock even more of the seasonal challenges. So it's a great way just to keep everything flowing, and for you to kind of expedite your progress at any point in time, because it does take time to purchase parts off the marketplace unless you plan on crafting them yourself, but even then, that'll still take time and probably isn't as economical. And not to mention, don't discredit the engineers. Some of their parts do have a positive crafting margin. It may be very low, but you still can get a crafting margin on there, so you can try to do that too if you get one that requires you to make rare ones. For example, I had to do a Spitfire one, and I did 2 of those, and I still made, you know, less than a couple of cents, but it's still fine. Now for brawling-based missions, there are a few options that you can do. Of course, you can do things like free-for-all racing, storm warning, or big black scorpions, and I recommend doing big black scorpions because that one is actually relatively fast. It puts you on a level playing field that you don't have to actually acquire a certain weapon or certain modules for, so it's a relatively easy one to get into. Not to mention that if any of the brawling missions have a badge requirement, Big Black Scorpions actually has a really easy badge requirement, since all you have to do is spam boosters and you get the maximum badges pretty much instantaneously. Now the other ones can be done as well, but like I said, those are most likely going to require you to have a bit more capital and a bit more built up parts. So by all means, if you want, you can go ahead and wait, and you can try to do Big Black Scorpions when it comes around again in rotation, because that one probably is going to be the easiest for all of you to do. Maybe a bit hard to learn how to use the Scorpion, but it's not terribly hard. Some of you may be tempted to actually try the Battle Royale mission, but I believe it's not a brawl per se, not to mention that the Battle Royale also has an incredibly long queue time, and is generally 20 to 30 minutes long unless you die really early, so it's not really ideal as well. And for those who have a more of a badge-based mission, you can always hover over the quest itself, and it will tell you the various badges and what parameters you can actually work with. This is similar to the parameter tip earlier. But you also may have different quests where it's like, help up fallen enemies, or do X, Y, or Z damage, or blah, 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 or get this patch. So if you don't know what patch that actually is, you can just quickly hover over it, and it'll actually give you a detailed description of what you can do. And if it does require you to actually deal damage in missions, I'd recommend doing something like Patrol, which is the easiest one to do for missions. Alright, so I want to thank you all for joining me. So if you have any tips yourselves, by all means, feel free to leave it down in the comments down below. We'll discuss. Maybe I'll add an addendum later on if they're good enough. But other than that, I also want to thank you all for joining me this evening. Follow whatever platform is your favorite. But other than that, guys, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.